our dear learners. This is Trinity College in Abingo. In particular, this is History Department. Going to present a topic of the 1848 revolutions in Europe by Apalokwang. I hope you are doing well and you are well protected. As we continue to interact, let's keep on praying for God's protection. Now, we're going to look at 1848 revolutions. Previously, we talked about 1830 revolutions. If you have tried to go through, then this will be just a kind of a recap, because it will be some of the points will be repeated, but of course at different levels. So in 1848, revolutions occurred in almost 17 to 19 states in Central Europe. Although it occurred in these states, there are some few countries that escaped from this, we call it a political pandemic, the 1848 revolutions. Now, to give you the background, we are looking at where, when, and who. Where, it means we have to identify some of the states that experienced the revolutions. The revolutions of 1848 first occurred in the Italian state of Sicily, that is in the town of Palermo, in January 1848. Then in February it is spread to France. Then in March it occurred in Vienna, that is in Austria, and therefore spread to other cities of Europe. So these revolutions occurred almost at the same time. That is in 1848, beginning from January up to May. And the revolutions were led by prominent nationalists. For example, in France, the revolution was led by Lamartine, Louis Blanc, among others. In the Italian states, there were nationalists like Garibaldi, Mazzini, and also later Cavour. Then in Prussia, there were nationalists like Bismarck. And in other states, revolutions were also, like in Hungary, Budapest, the revolution was led by a prominent journalist and a university student in the name of Louis Kossuth. Now, these revolutions can be traced from the unfair terms of the Vienna settlement of 1815, because during the Vienna settlement, there were some unrealistic resolutions that occurred. Some states were put under bigger states, like Italian states and German states. And following the Vienna settlement, the Congress system, which was still a product of the Vienna settlement, tried to defend these unfair terms. And that is why the Congress system was also blamed for the occurrence of this revolution. The revolutions were also inspired by the 1789 French Revolution, which spread ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The success of 1830 revolutions, especially in France and Belgium, inspired nationalists to spark off the revolutions. The spread of liberalism, that is desire for freedom, nationalism, desire to fight for independence, especially for those states that were under foreign domination, like Hungary, Croatia, Italian states, German states, among others. We can still blame Metternich system, which was very oppressive, the despotic nature of most of the monarchies. They denied nationalist justice, which eventually forced them to resort to violence. Then also the population growth, which the government in Europe did not prepare for, caused economic crisis, unemployment, In some states, like Italian states and German states, there was a strong desire for unification or for unity, which made them to unite to fight against obstacles, which was roadblocking their unification attempt. The rise of revolutionary leaders, I've already mentioned some of them, Louis Kossuth, uh, Bismarck, Garibaldi, Mazzini, Cavour, among others. Then the spread of the diseases, contagious diseases. In this case, we can give an example of cholera, which started from China and swept most of the European countries. There was also bad weather in 1847, which was characterized by drought, resulting to poor harvest, which therefore resulted into various economic crises. Yeah, the economic distress are very broad. There are some which were related to poor working conditions, like in France, in as much as these countries underwent industrial revolution, but had such economic crisis. The media in some countries, like in Italian states, there was the spread of, there was the newspapers like Il Risorgimento, which eventually spread in various parts of Europe. In some countries, like in the German states, there was the development of the custom union called Zollverein, which brought the middle class together and they supported the nationalists to fight for freedom. Then there was a desire for competent government in some countries. For example, in France, the Louis Philippe of Orleans monarchy was very inefficient, failed to provide a solution to various political, social, and economic hegemony that people had interest. So he failed to promote the interests of the glory seekers, which eventually forced them to support the revolution to overthrow such leaders. Now, these revolutions had positive and negative impact. One of the major impact was the downfall of Metternich. For 33 years, Metternich had dominated the history of Europe, but his system was very oppressive to the masses, exposed the weakness of the Vienna settlement and its unfairness, collapse of some of the monarchies in Europe. New leaders rose to power. In France, we can give an example of Louis Napoleon III and the establishment of the Second French Republic and later the French Empire. The revolution also registered loss of lives because it was characterized by bloodshed. Like elsewhere, the revolution led to the spread of revolutionary ideas, destruction of property. To the Italians and the Germans, the revolution was positive because nationalists learned a lesson which made them lay a strong foundation for the unification. The revolution strengthened the activities of the middle class. Like in Germany, there was the Zollverein. Now, when you look at the revolutions, the causes and effects, it is also imperative that we look at the common features, the common characteristics, what appeared in almost all these revolutions. And you realize that when we try to scan the causes, effects, and the cause, we find there are some similarities in these revolutions. For example, these revolutions occurred almost at the same time, and the revolutions were led by intellectuals, the educated people. We have given an example of Louis Kossuth, the example of Lamartine, the example of Garibaldi. These were educated people. Then this revolution also occurred in urban centers. In some cases, when they are setting questions, they may not ask you, examine the causes and consequences of the 1848 revolution in France, in Austria, in Hungary. They may use instead the capital cities where this revolution is sparked off. For example, in France, they may talk about Paris. In Austria, they may talk about the Vienna. In Prussia, they may talk about Berlin. In Austria, in Hungary, they may talk about Budapest. In Sicily, they may talk about Palermo. So these revolutions started from urban centers and later spread to other areas. Then the revolution was characterized by violence, bloodshed, loss of property. Most of them were a result of desire for constitutionalism, parliamentary reforms, democratic reforms. So this brings us to the idea that this revolution had some common features. These common features, once you have mastered it, help you to argue on various causes and effects of this revolution. However, in as much as the revolution occurred in various states, there are some few states that did not experience the revolution. One of those states was Britain. Even Belgium, that had experienced a revolution in 1830, escaped the 1848 revolutions, meaning that there are some uniqueness in some of these states. Some of the major problems which caused revolutions elsewhere were either not in these countries or those problems were solved by the competent governments. And it is again such background that if you are asked a question to account for the occurrence of revolutions elsewhere but not in Britain or Belgium, you have to take note that these countries where the revolutions were not experienced in 1848 had strong governments, competent government that provided solution to some of the problems that other countries faced. Then we talk of the good parliamentary system, especially democracy, that was practiced in Britain and even in Belgium after the Belgian Revolution. The economic strength of these countries, like Britain was the first country in Europe to undergo industrial revolution. Britain had also advantage of its location that was located in an island and was far from the area where the revolutionary volcano was erupting. Then even people who were fleeing from other revolutionary centers to Britain to seek for political asylum, there was a strict monitoring of some of these people so that they will not try to spread liberal ideas. Then Metternich had no much influence in Britain. And throughout the Congress system, Britain had adopted a policy of isolation. Britain had a liberal policy and supported liberal movements. Now, it is against such a scenario that Britain and Belgium did not experience this political crisis. Dear students, as we come to the conclusion of this brief summary and presentation of the 1848 revolutions, I still implore you to read in detail in order to generate examples, illustration for effective argument and analysis of these facts. Otherwise, for more of this, please visit the link below for other subjects and for other historical facts. We meet next time. God bless you, and I wish you good luck. This is Apalokwang.